allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. How important coffee is.
Priority.
Of course.
Yes.
Good morning.
Morning.
We will start our county board meeting with the public comment period. Anybody in the audience wishing to address us, you have 2 minutes, please. And it looks like we have some special guests today.
Wow.
Yay!
Good morning.
And a
Good morning.
trophy.
And it's with a dog on it. Yeah.
Well, the dog is here.
And the trophy winner. Nice.
The real star.
Yeah.
Deputy Adam Carlson and K-9 Cleo just went up to the trials over the weekend. And last year, they took first place with a perfect score, 200 out of 200. This year, he got another 200 out of 200 and again took first place.
All right.
Chief Deputy Mueller is holding one of the plaques that he got for going to the Nationals, and the team that he was on also took first place.
All right.
Excellent.
So I've had a great year.
Excellent.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
A few words. Well, now, the service life. Cleo's been with us for,
She's 8 years old. She's been with us for a little over 7.
what's the expected, is she retiring soon or?
Potentially, yes. We're slating maybe within a year or 2, depending on her health.
What, other than getting such great scores in the working day, what's been her what has she accomplished for Winona County residents?
Over the course of all the years, we've tracked suspects. I can remember it was probably our first track. It was over 3 miles long on a fleeing felon, and we were assisting Fillmore County about 10 below 0 that night. Tracked that gentleman for just about 3 miles. Took him into custody. We've also had tracks. Little girl, she was probably 2 years old, wandered off into a tall grassy field next down the lane.
Yeah.
They assisted us in helping find her. We've had numerous felony drug arrests out on the interstate, working with my partners, working with State Patrol, different agencies. We go over into Wisconsin, assist Wisconsin with sniffs. Trying to think of some other ones here. We tracked a suspect in Houston County one night. It was approximately 2 hours after that suspect had left that residence on a hard surface track. She tracked right to the front door of a house, sniffed the front door, sat down, looked at me, and said, "Bad guy's inside the house."
Wow.
Aw.
Houston County did a knock and talk, and the suspect was actually inside the house. Don't know if they would ever solve that one without
Well,
her.
she's fantastic, but we know you work as a team too, so
Thank you.
What's her breed?
She's a Belgian Malinois. One of very few female police dogs in the state of Minnesota. We're getting to have a few more. She has a sister that's a K-9.
Yeah, we need more women
Yeah, that's
dogs.
right.
Gender equity, does it fall underneath that?
Does she only work on like the citizenry, or does she help keep Buzzwell in line too?
Yeah.
A little of both, yeah.
Okay. I think definitely keep her out as long as you can.
Well, thank you and congratulations.
Yeah.
We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
And thanks for coming by.
200. Wow.
Where's our reporters when we need them? We can get her picture in the paper. Awesome. Anybody else? Please state your name and address for the record.
Arvin Denzer from Minnesota City, 25960 Square Valley Drive. I'm here today, go for this solar property. I've lived in Winona County all my life. I'm a Winona County landowner. My dad and them owned my farm ever since it's been Denzer ever since it's been going, since 1906 there. And I plan to put a solar garden on my property. I've spoken to the neighbors, and the received 12 signatures showing their support. And I've collected a series of pictures showing the views from my home's project area. So can hand them out here if you guys want to look at them or whatever here. Hand them out, okay.
Those are different than the ones we have.
I don't know if this is pictures of the neighboring house and there's the neighbor's signatures.
Or else make sure you put one out for public too.
Yeah, just on the table.
I'll keep one for the public. Here's one for the public. And then these are pictures of the house. We can go through them if you want. And then on the back, it shows the map where all those neighbors have signed those.
Ask that you guys look them over. I believe that's the best use for my land. Winona County property owner. Thanks very much. That's all I got to say.
All right, thank you.
My name is Chris Bender and Son. We can get investment for us down the line. We will get the farm eventually. Two young kids too that will get it after me, so it's always going to be in the family name and stuff. So I figured it'd be a good investment for the next 5 years. But I think that should be it. So, all right, thanks.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. My name is Sam Falk. My address is 2303 Wycliffe Street, St. Paul. I'm a permitting specialist for NES. We're based out of St. Charles. I work out of the St. Paul office. And I'm here today to show support for the novel Denzer project, which I believe is item 6.3 on your agenda. I was also at the Planning Commission meeting. I presented on behalf of this project, and I just wanted to offer some clarifications on that. The Planning Commission did not give the recommendation for approval, but I believe they did not have all the accurate or correct information in order to make that decision. The size and the location of the array that was originally shown was far greater and doesn't show how far east it would be on the parcel. I believe the explanations packet that kind of offers some clarification has been distributed. We believe that that covers and mitigates all the concerns that were brought up by the Planning Commission, specifically the amount of the array that's on the slope, the size of the array, and the setbacks to the neighboring dwellings. If you look at the updated information, you can clearly see, or you can see that we do meet or exceed the newer solar ordinances, even though we're under the old ones. Everything is at least a football field away, over 300 feet. And as Darwin had said, we have talked to all the or a good amount of the neighbors nearby and received their support. Our permitting team and myself, we're here to answer any questions during your discussions if anything comes up. So please don't hesitate to ask any of us. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Janelle Dean. I live at 18508 Middle Valley Road in rural Minnesota City. We're all connected and we are all in climate crisis. Now is not the time to deny solar solutions. I reside in Rolling Stone Township and live about 2.5 miles away from the proposed solar community garden. Due to climate change, 2019 was the wettest year on record in Minnesota. Well over half the state was 50 to 70% wetter than normal. Stormwater runoff management and flooding has become a huge issue and expense for many of us. The home that I still live in was flooded in 2007. We've made changes to our property, but I fear that it will happen again. Predictions are that this pattern will continue to get worse unless we make changes now. Some Rolling Stone Township neighbors worry about property values dropping due to solar installation. In one instance, a very large solar developer here in Minnesota purchased 3 or 4 houses that were on each side of the installation. After the development was complete, they sold the homes at the same price. Populations of pollinators are also in crisis. 33% of the food we consume exists because it was pollinated by a pollinator. Without pollinators, hard work, fruit doesn't grow or ends up smaller and misshapen. Pollinator-friendly solar gardens provide an affordable solution to help pollinators and our food system. While some neighbors worry about the ugliness of solar arrays, they are not recognizing the benefits these safe, quiet, clean, pollinator-friendly solar neighbors offer. Nearby residents of Solar Gardens will see an increase in diversity of wildlife. They will not be bothered by loud music. The water that flows off solar panels becomes filtered and cleaner because perennial vegetation has deeper roots and filters water that goes to aquifers. Solar site provides clean air, clean water, and economic development. We need to address the climate crisis. Survival is more important than aesthetics. How much rain will we get in 2020? Pollinator-friendly solar is an answer. Thanks.
Good morning, my name is Mike Keekbush. I live at 25775 Highway 248, Minnesota City, Minnesota 55959. I would like to speak about my concerns about the proposed Denzer Novell solar panel array. I'm concerned about the glare that will be caused by the solar panels. I would not feel safe looking out my windows or looking in that direction when in my yard due to the amount of glare that is caused by the solar panels. I've seen this type of solar panels that are being proposed for this, and they produce a large amount of glare. This photo is an example of the amount of glare that will be caused by the same type of panels. I also don't feel that the screening will provide adequate masking of the solar panel array. I also spoke with a local realtor, and I was told by them that I could see a 5 to 10% loss of property value if the solar panel array was built by my property. I could not afford to have that happen. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Address the Winona County Board. Anything else?
Hello, I'm Ralph Kaler from Novel Energy. We're Winona County residents, farmers, and also owners of Novel Energy. I'm here to just bring up the information about the Denzer solar project we're proposing to build. It's a good project. As you can see, the support for most of the people in the valley are there. We apologize for the confusion that's created for our part in it. Part of it was due as the whole lease area was identified for the array rather than the layout. When we address it, there is only one house that will have a direct view of the array. We have provided and mitigated all the concerns identified in the township meetings and the planning commission. We propose screening on both sides. We aren't on the slopes. And the house that sees it in your photo is at about a 45-degree angle from the array. The glare won't hit in that direction. As evidence of that, we have a 2-megawatt array 1,000 feet from the St. Charles Catholic Church. That's directly south of the array. There has been no glare issues, same panels. But at a 45-degree angle with screening and the location, it's over 300 feet, there will not be an issue. The other two houses in the southwest corner of the array cannot see the array out of their window. It is blocked by the houses. So we have support. We believe the project meets all the requirements under the old ordinance and the new one. And with these addressed concerns, we should mitigate them as much as can be. And whether it's agriculture, solar array, with change always comes concern and confusion. So we ask that you pull the array COP from the consent agenda, review and update the information. We are available here, our permitting team and myself, and you do have our guarantee is residents of Winona County for over 130 years. We will be good neighbors and do everything we can to mitigate any neighbors' concerns and work with them, just as we have done with all our business over 5 generations. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address the Winona County Board? All right. Thank you for your comments. Moving on in our agenda, item 3, approval of the county board minutes from January 28th, 2020.
Cool.
Meyer to approve the meeting minutes, January 28th. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, approved. Item 4, acknowledge the receipt of the approved committee meeting minutes from Planning Commission, November 21st, 2019.
Move to acknowledge 4.1.
Second.
By Commissioner Jacob, seconded by Commissioner Kavesi to approve the acknowledgement of the approved meeting minutes from planning November 21st. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, approved. Consent comments and approval of the agenda. Mr. Fritz?
Nothing to add.
Okay. Commissioner Kavesi?
I'd like to pull agenda item 6.3 for discussion.
6.3, then we'll move it to general business for 7.0. Anything else?
No.
Okay, Commissioner Meyer?
I have an announcement.
Announcement, all right.
One announcement, I'd like to pull item 6.5.
5. Okay, 6.5, so we'll make 6.5 7.01. All right. Attorney Sonoman? Finance, Pat? Marine, Holte? HR? Okay. I do have board researcher action. I have 2 items I would like to consider. All right, with that, I would entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the amended agenda.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner Olson to approve the amended agenda. All those in favor say aye, or discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, amended agenda approved. Mr. Fritz, if you would read the remaining items into the record, please.
Okay, consent business, 6.1, approved conditional use permit for Theodore Humfeld. 6.2, approved conditional use permit for Dennis and Sandra Jacobs and Winona Solar LLC. 6.3 has been pulled. 6.4, approved conditional use permit for Stephen and Janine Walski and Emma Walski and Jacob Tim. 6.5 has been pulled for further more discussion. 6.6, approved 2020 SMART grant for sexual assault interagency council and resolution. 6.7, approved LG 220 gambling application for exempt permit Friends of County Climbers Snowmobile Club. 6.8, approved renewal of agreement with Common Ground for Rule 25 assessments. 6.9, approved renewal of Slipstream group agreement and approved county administrator designee to sign Slipstream. 6.10, approved joint powers agreement and resolution for national incident-based reporting system. 6.11, confirm payment of disbursements. That completes the consent agenda.
By Commissioner Jacob, seconded by Commissioner Meyer to approve the consent business. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, approved. So now, under general business, we will go to the 6.3, the conditional use permit for Darwin and Susan Denzer and Novell Energy. Started on page 57, and we've received a number of new documents. Commissioner Bessie.
I just wanted to make sure we had a chance to discuss the new information. I was at the Planning Commission meeting, and I don't know what we can do to prevent somebody from coming in with an incomplete or an inaccurate application, but I feel like that's what happened in this respect. So, one sense, it means the Planning Commission went through all of their discussion and deliberation, and it wasn't based on total information. I do think that with the new information, the panels are not on the steepest part of the parcel, and that was one piece of information that the Planning Commission discussed. There still seems to be some contention about whether the landscape plan is complete or not complete. So those are some of the points, and I'll just, I just think we need to discuss it.
Did we get a member of the planning department up to, oh, there's Kay.
If we have some specifics, Madam Chair and County Board members, about the project, Blake Leah, the staff member for the project, is also here. In regards specifically to the landscape plan, typically before a development certificate is issued, then a full landscape plan is reviewed by the department. And we wouldn't treat this project any differently than any other project. Their preliminary submittal of it's not a landscape plan, it's kind of a series of figure eights that doesn't have any plant species or spacing that represents actual evergreen trees or plant material, is not considered a landscape plan. And so I guess the department was left with questions, if they were trying to help change their denial with the county board to a positive, if they were planting outside the fence toward the road right-of-way, it looks like there might be enough room. They changed from what they submitted to the department to what you see on your desks today and reduced the amount of potential screening. And, part of the analysis that would be done by the department before a development certificate would be issued, again, it would be the same as any other. That would be an analysis of where the neighboring properties are and where the panels, based on the latest plan that they submitted, would be located. So we would address that in the same way that we have others.
So in other words, it's okay to submit a preliminary landscape plan with the CUP, and then if the CUP is approved, then the staff works with the applicant to develop a real landscape plan.
Correct. The only reason that we give guidance ahead of time or suggest that they work out some of this is to make sure that there's enough room to maintain the plant material so that they're not continuously trying to have an operations or maintenance company take care of something that's impossible because it's too close to the arrays and there's not room for even a 4x4 to get past, to kind of not set themselves up for trouble. And sometimes because of deer predation, it's useful to have the plant material inside the fence. That also means then the arrays get set back further and could potentially be up the slope further. If they take it on the outside of the fence, then probably it could be accommodated. So those are some of the variables that we would look at should the county board move forward with changing the denial to an approval.
So the map showing where the arrays are placed now is accurate if they don't have to plant inside the fence? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
So did the planning commission receive, this is, 25% smaller at least proposal than what the planning commission saw. Did they see the wrong information or has the application changed?
That's going to have to be a question for Blake. We did receive information the day of the planning commission that the planning department did not have a chance to evaluate. That's unusual, but yet, we do receive information
Sure,
from petitioners as well as others the day of the meeting.
Yeah, and I guess the clarification point that I would offer is just that the map that was shown at the planning commission meeting wasn't meant to be the entire array area, it was the lease area. But because they hadn't submitted a plan of where the panels were gonna be, I took the entire lease area as kind of a worst case scenario, that panels covering the entire thing. But their clarification then showed that they were planning it on the east side, and then I think they're using that other westerly portion of their lease area for some staging. So we just didn't have, I guess, the full application of where the panels were gonna be, and then they brought that to the meeting that night, but then I know there was some confusion around what the slopes were, and because we couldn't line that up very well with our aerials, it wasn't a great representation. So it just kind of came together a little late, but I do think the new information they showed, does give us a better idea of where it will be, and there's not gonna be as much of an elevation change. I believe from the neighboring houses now, they're only about 10 feet above. Some of those were before, if they'd have been planting the entire lease area, there were spots where they could have been 30 or 40 feet above the neighboring houses, and it would have been really difficult to screen.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, this would be a much different review by the planning
right, it would
commission.
have been a very different discussion, yeah. So
Yeah, so I guess I'd offer for discussion to the county board, is that without breaching any open meeting laws, I did call one planning commission member, Mike Flynn, voted against this, to deny this proposal. And this was last night. He said if there was not panels on that high area, that he wouldn't have voted against it. So then it would have been a 4-4 split, and the motion to deny would have failed due to a lack of majority.
Yes.
So I
Commissioner
didn't,
Ryan.
I was at the MICA meeting that night, but I did watch a recording of the meeting. It was clear to me that there was a lot of confusion. The chair, Eugene Hansen, was talking about trees that needed to be 100 feet tall, and Kelly Stanich, who voted in favor of it, was talking about like an 8-foot difference in elevation from the houses to the, kind of where she thought the point of the array would go. And I was trying to look at what was in the packet, which was actually like a water management plan that did have a layout, but you're right, it was different than this. And it wasn't superimposed. So I agree that if those houses across the road are like, based on this, like 750 some feet, that the tallest piece of this is, you're right, it's kind of between 760 and 770, so maybe 15 feet, but still, the majority of this is at the same elevation as the homes across. So clearly there was, I could see from the tape of it that there was confusion between the different.
It was also, I was in the audience, and wasn't my first time sitting in the audience, but it was not, there was confusion, but people would step up to the map and the audience couldn't see what they were pointing at. You couldn't really hear all of the discussion. I don't know if people were too far from their microphones. Some of that can be worked out, but it was confusing even in the audience of what, how the discussion was going. So it was difficult to follow,
Yeah, so sitting as really the liaison to the Planning Commission, I was in the minority. I supported the application 3 to 5. So I supported it then. I'm not going to change that position. I'm going to continue to support it. But I do have concerns with, I don't want to damage my relationship with the Planning Commission. I have some concerns that they could feel like, hey, if Steve doesn't get his way, the Planning Commission, he goes to the county board. But I'm going to remain consistent with this vote as what I voted before. But I do have a concern about, we did have a public hearing. This is significantly different than what the public saw, and I'm concerned for the people who came and spoke against this. I'm wondering what the 60-day time clock is, how that plays out, and I'm concerned that we're voting on something different than what the public hearing was on. So that I have reservations about that.
We're
Would it
voting on
be
something
possible?
different than what the Planning Commission voted on.
Yes.
Right.
mhm.
So
So do we-
between those two issues, I had concerns. I don't know if we can, we'll have to see what the timeline is.
Well, with permission of the applicant, and they're checking staff time now, but you're right, there's substantial change, and what Commissioner Jacobs said is right. The Planning Commission dealt with something different, as everybody's knowledgeable. So do we have 60 days, staff, or even would the applicant be willing to put it on the next planning, with the new information, the next Planning Commission meeting, correct? Is that what we're?
That's a suggestion, or, I mean, personally, I don't feel like it's enough of a change to warrant. That all takes staff time. I'm just saying I have that concern. I don't know what the
Staff?
resolution is.
The application was received on December 16th of 2019, which would make the 60-day time clock end this Friday on February 14th. However, if you do wish to extend that, you do have the ability, as long as notification of that's provided in writing.
I would prefer, actually.
I'm asking, I
Okay.
think we've got some information out there from the developer.
Oh.
Ralph, do you have a?
And we want to be good neighbors with this, so the confusion was that the whole lease area was listed rather than the identification of the panels. So if it's going back to the Planning Commission, I agree, we want to respect their wishes. With having the panels laid in the map, which at that meeting. I wasn't there, but I understand the confusion. Every concern is addressed with the height, the screening is in there. And, you know, we've stopped at the house that can see and offered to showed the screening and even putting screening there. So if we need to go back to the planning commission and the time to go to their next meeting and have that updated information, we're very willing to do that. So, and we have stopped at all the residents. I haven't talked to all of them, but we've made multiple stops there and left the cards. So,
Right, thank you.
so whatever for a resolution, we'll do what it takes.
With this application having changed, it's not very much different than we did a Dingfelter one, literally on the other side of this road, a mile up. I mean, I struggle with saying to one applicant, you can do it, and to the next applicant, you can't. I don't want to single one person out, treat them differently than the population as a whole. So I support it, again, I support it now. I just have the one concern about the people who spoke against it and no, not really, and having the opportunity to have their true public hearing on what the actual application was.
Okay, Quali, please.
Madam Chair, county board members, if it was kicked back to the planning commission, it cannot be on the February meeting. It would have to go to the March meeting, but we could schedule the county board meeting right away. But it wouldn't make it to the February planning commission.
But you're saying we could do it at our next meeting? We could have a public hearing at our next meeting? Is that what you're suggesting?
Possibility. Yeah,
Yeah, that we could do.
We could do
that's a
that.
possibility, yeah.
That'd only postpone it 30 days.
And it would give, I mean, we got a lot of new information and to review it.
Can we do it?
Okay.
I make a motion that we continue about this application, extending it for the amount of time needed for a public hearing at our next board meeting.
Or February,
February 25th?
February 25th. Okay. That, did we change that meeting to a morning? Right, okay, all right. Okay, we have a motion to refer this to the county board agenda for a public hearing on February 25th.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a second. Motion made by Commissioner Kvesi, second by Commissioner Olson. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, all right. We will have a public hearing that'll be posted. Staff will do what they need to do to post it. Okay. All right, thank you. The next item was 6.5, approve resolution creating jail design and construction committee.
Yeah, so as I read through the packet, of course, as this process moves along, we still have a number of unanswered questions. I'm still wondering about, is this an appropriate time for me to ask a question about land acquisition, where we're at on that?
Yeah, anything I think is fair game at this point. And I can kind of address that issue. That it's been same question's been presented a number of times. Right now, we're in the process of reviewing the contracts for the architect and for the construction manager at risk. We had anticipated getting those to the county board earlier, but there's been, like I said before, we want to make sure that we go through every detail. It's a big project, so taking our time, making sure that MCIT is involved and so forth to get the insurance and liability. So Karen's been working on that along with our staff quite a bit. So that we still expect that maybe to be done in the next board meeting or next two board meetings. So we won't actually have those groups under contract for probably a month or so, which is a month that we wouldn't need the land, obviously. After we hire the architect, there's a couple months, probably 2 to 3 months worth of non-site specific planning that goes into it. The first things they do is they have to figure out the actual program for the jail. So they have to go through a process of figuring out what's actually needed in the jail. So they program, they come up with a list of programs, so booking, holding, you know, specialty beds, how, you know, the different laundry, food service, medical support, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then they have to figure out the adjacencies for that, so how that's all gonna kind of fit together. And so there's a whole bunch of planning that goes on before you ever get to designing the actual jail on a piece of property. And so that can be done and undertaken without a specific answer on the property itself. That also would apply to any other property that we would get because the same functions apply. So there's that process. The other part of that is that the Karin is working on securing the property, and we're making some progress on that. And I don't think we want to get into details on it, but done in that time frame, that 3 to 4 months. Have a site-specific plan or work going toward that. Kind of in a nutshell, the process right now.
I have a couple other questions too. So presently, we've got a jail construction planning committee, and this item 6.5, was to create a jail design and construction committee.
Yeah.
So my question is, does the JDCC, is it in addition to the JCPC, or is it does it replace the JDCC?
Yeah, it replaces the previous one. The previous one was, the title came from a state statute that regarding construction of jails. But it was basically to get the architect vetted and the construction manager vetted and make that recommendation to the county board under the last resolution that the county board passed. This one is to actually do the planning and construction, to oversee the planning and construction.
Okay, so
design and construction.
that leads to my next question. It says that 2 commissioners would sit on there. So if we approve this today, it doesn't say which commissioners. So how would those commissioners be picked, and what would the time commitment be?
Well, we'd hope that you could address it as either today, or you could address it at the next meeting. You know, it doesn't really matter. It should fit the timetable by either of those.
But being on consent business, it was kind of intended to go through today without discussion
Yeah,
of that.
but as far as, so we could do you could do as far as time commitment goes, this is an oversight committee. Most of the work on the ground will be done by the project manager once we get going. So for the first part of it, when they're working on the design of the facility with the architect and somewhat with the construction manager, the meetings might be a little more frequent. So maybe a couple times a month or something like that for this committee. Once we get to the actual letting of contracts for construction, it'll be more of like once a month, because the project manager will be doing it day to day, along with the rest of the staff, architect and the construction manager. So that's where you're actually building the building. So that's kind of the time commitment there for the actual committee members. Typically in the past, we've had meetings as we need them, because we were working on a specific project like vetting an architect, and so this will have some relation to what the architect needs. So if the architect during the design process needs to meet every other week to kind of go over what they've done, then that's what the committee would do. How we get the final design to the county board, and the county board approves it. Once the final design is approved by the county board, this committee is kind of it's more of an oversight committee at that point, and then you've got the project manager working actually on the project with the architect, the construction manager, and all these subcontractors.
So then that leads to my next question. It spoke in the packet about part of the responsibilities would be from the commissioners, or the group that we form would be the costs that would be associated either with building a 98 or a 78 bed facility.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of wondering, I feel like between the uncertainty on the land acquisition and the uncertainty of the size of it's kind of like we're going along with one foot on the brake and one on the gas, and we're trying to move forward. But when would we expect a vote to occur on the size of the facility?
That's a good question, because without the architect, one of the first things that the committee has to do is sit with the architect and say, okay, the first task we have is to provide a 78 alternative and a 98 alternative to the county board. What do we need to do to get there? So we don't really, until we engage the architect and actually sit down and talk about how do we get to that point, we don't know if it'll take the architect a month or 2 months or.
So I'm just trying to figure out whether I want to try to be one of the people on this committee,
Yeah.
based on what
Yeah.
we're trying to build or
Yeah.
not build.
Yeah. Well,
So-
the first task of the committee, other than, it's not, the county board is hiring the architect and the construction manager based on the other committee's recommendation. So that's done, or will be done. And then this committee, the first task is to talk to the architect about how do we get this alternatives in front of the county board, so you guys can make a decision on the size of the facility. That has to be done before we can still do some of the programming stuff, but we have to know that fairly soon in the process. So you got to bring in something that's going to say, here's more than what we did last time. Last time when the cost estimates were pretty general, based on square footage. So the architect just took how many square feet, 20 beds is, and said this is how much it's going to cost. But that doesn't include a lot of different things. So the architect, in this case, the one project, will go into more detail to figure out those cost differences, and then bring it back. So yeah, there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of things that work in parallel, and a lot of things that some of them are linear, some of them are parallel. It's a complicated project at this point because we don't have the land actually pinned down, because we still have a question of what size facility. So yeah, it makes it more complicated. Not much of an answer, but it.
Yeah, okay, well, that answers my question, so I'll move to approve item 6.5.
Meyer to approve by the creation of a JDCC. Discussion. I've got some questions. It seems like there's a lot of blind faith in this whole project. But you're saying we're going to hire this architect and everything, and I don't know that, in my mind, that the county board has decided, are we doing juveniles, are we doing women, or are we just building something to replace the existing structure? Because in my mind, that changes a lot of things, how you lay it out, how you design it. So I feel maybe we're jumping the gun a little bit because we haven't decided what we want to do. Where is the Department of Corrections in here? Because I've heard horror stories from other counties. You build something and then they come in and tell you, well, yeah, this isn't right, that isn't right, this isn't what we want. So where does, and they should be a partner. It seems we're mandated to do this, but we have no partnership with the people who mandate it.
Yeah. I'm going to try to address them one at a time, because
Okay.
I'll forget
Yeah, all right.
the first one by the time I get to the last one.
I'll hold back.
So the first one was regarding the design. We can't, the county board, without the architect engaged and actually doing that kind of schematic design work to tell you how a juvenile, let's say couple juvenile beds, 4 or 5 juvenile beds, which has been talked about, fits into the plan. Without the architect to actually sit down and figure that out and then give you an option, we can't give you an option.
Okay, so an architect is going to be told to come in with and right there, I have issues with having to spend a lot of money, taxpayer dollars, on an architect when, again, this is a mandated function by the state of Minnesota, and here, this is what you should build. This is what we will approve. Instead of us and taxpayers all across the state of Minnesota spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on drawings.
Yeah, it'd be nice if they gave us a template and said, this is what you need to build, but it doesn't work that way.
Well, I think we need to we can't, again, we have to look to the future. We can't keep accepting poor behavior in the past. And in my opinion, that's poor behavior on the Department of Corrections. They're not doing their job. So somehow we have to push back.
Okay, so as far as the DOC being involved, they're not listed as a committee member because they're not really part of the committee. They're a resource. So as we've indicated in the past, and Steve, our jail administrator, has indicated, is we've already contacted them. We want them to be involved in all these meetings that they're willing to come to, and have them involved up front, so that as we design, as they go through the design process, they're not saying at the last minute, oh yeah, you can't do that, even though you've taken 6 months. The idea is to bring them alongside of us. It's just that we don't have to have a contract with them for that. We're not paying them to do that, and they're not an official member of
We
the
are
committee.
paying them because they're state
Well,
employees.
I know, but a county paying directly, like we are the architect or
Yeah.
the construction manager. So they're a part of the team. It's just not in the formal committee because they're not really we don't control them. We don't, the architect isn't a member of the committee. The construction manager is a member of the committee because they're resources that we're using for the project.
And then another, so again, that's as gray as gray. One of the biggest expenses of doing this is not the brick and mortar, it's the staffing. So at some point in time, we really need to analyze if we go this size, or if we do, regular inmates and women and children, what our staffing requirements will be. And that, to me, is and that's ongoing. And every year, there are gonna be, 3% raises and things like that. So it does concern me. So will this group be receiving information and analyzing the staffing that would go along with different designs?
Short answer is yes, and the more detailed is that part of the job of the project manager isn't just to build, oversee the building of the facility. Part of that is that we have to develop procedures and processes that are tied to the actual flow and function of the new jail. So, for instance, in the old jail, we have a huge procedure manual, policy and procedure manual that they have to, for every, protocols for every possible thing they run into. Those all have to be redone for the new jail. And
I would hope they just need to be updated,
well,
not redone.
no, they're based on the type of locking, whether you have two doors, where you have one door, how many officers have to be in here, what you have to do to take a prisoner from here to there. There's a lot, all that stuff's controlled.
I prefer the word updated versus redone, because redone to me is.
Well, it's a new facility, so you have to change them. They are updated, but they're not updated for the old facility. They're
the function.
Updated to go for the new one.
Right, but the function of holding an inmate should be
getting them from-
relatively consistent across the state of Minnesota.
True, but getting from A to Z in the building may be different depending on the design of the building. So you have to, that's part of the process. So there's a lot of work that has to be done in that policies and procedures area. And a lot of that flows from the design of the building, and then of course from that flows staffing. So depending on what kind of building design you adopt, that's gonna dictate to some degree what kind of staffing we have. We've had a little talk about staffing. The jail administrators indicated that depending on what kind of design, if they go with the design they're kind of favor, staffing should be similar to what we have now, but that all has to be worked out. Everything kind of flows from, you've got what your needs are, and then you've got, well, what kind of building does that make, because you have to get the adjacencies right. Then what kind of procedures do you have, and then what kind of staffing does that take to do? So all that has to be done, and that's all under this umbrella of the project. We talk a lot about the construction, but that's really kind of it's a brick and mortar thing. You build a building, it's there, and then you pay for it. The rest, like you said, that's a bigger part of it. The whole process, procedure, staffing, all that kind of stuff, flow of inmates and things. That's really a big part, and that's why we have to have a project manager dedicated to it for such a long period of time. And then there's, of course, the additional staff, the sheriff's department, the DOC, and anything else that comes into play. It's actually a bigger part of the project, I would say, than actually building the building. To some degree. I mean, they're both complicated, but I think that's a really important and big part. And it will drive cost over time, where the other one is, once you build it.
Last question, because it was a hot topic when we talked about this a number of years ago, was pods. Are pods still an option, or is that, have we
You'd have
gone
to
away
ask
from that?
Steve on that, if he's still here.
Like a tiny house, concept.
Yeah, Steve would be,
We
this
just
is
ordered
where we have the
10
expertise.
We just ordered 10 pods, we put them together like Lincoln or
But we're talking about
Legos.
stainless steel cells, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
They're a prefab.
Is that still something?
Madam Chair and Board, absolutely. Well, everything's on the table, obviously, but obviously, once we get an architect on board, they would be able to come in and say what's probably the soundest decision for the life cycle of the building. I could stand up here forever, obviously, and I know you guys know I would too. But that building over there was probably one of the most, or least expensive buildings to build back in 1977. But if they would have looked into the future, not only for staffing, but for the brick and mortar,
as I've said before, I would not be standing here talking about a jail. We might be talking about fixing things up, changing things, remodeling, as your term was, changing a door. But we would not be looking at spending tens of millions of dollars of the taxpayers' money.
And hindsight is 20/20, we know
Well,
that.
So when
They
we
did
look
the
at
best job.
construction,
I'm sorry,
Yep.
I have to stop you.
Yep.
I said, at the time, they made the best decision for the taxpayers in Winona County. I mean, I seriously
Well,
have to believe they did. They didn't do anything, so I don't want to throw them under the bus,
and
what
me
they
neither.
did.
Me neither, Madam Chair, but all I'm talking about is back then they had options. Today, we definitely have options too. So what we definitely need to look at is, the biggest cost to the taxpayers is me, the employee. So no matter what gets built, we need to look at staffing, and that is gonna be a very important thing to look at for the brick and mortar. But there's also rules that were not followed back in the 70s as far as sight, sound separation. So when you add in a juvenile, there needs to even be a separate sight, sound separation. So that actually means that you might be building out a little bit bigger building, but over the life cycle of that building, do you save money? Because you're able to hold those kids or that level of classification inside of the jail. So it's really, as Administrator Fritz was saying, and he's very in tune on it, so I'm impressed listening to what he's saying, because he's nailing everything of what really is important for the Winona County community, is what we're building is to take care of everything inside this county, not to ship it up, to keep it all right here, to keep
Well,
those
that
cost
hasn't
downs
been
over
determined
cycle.
yet. That has not been
Well,
determined yet, sir.
yeah.
That's a personal opinion, and the
Well,
board has not taken action on that
Yep.
yet. Okay? So we have to keep an
Not
open
disagreeing
mind.
with that, yeah.
We might not. I mean, I don't mean to, but I hear that more and more, and the county board has not made that decision, and I think that's unfortunately, I think that's a county board decision, because we have to figure out how it all fits and how it all gets paid for. You can advocate, yes, but I think that is a county board decision that has not been made yet. Okay, Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, all of these are really valid questions, because this is a new project. None of us have ever been involved in anything of this scope and complexity, as we've discussed. As it's laid out on page 68, it gives the function, the first point gives the function of the committee. Guide and manage the jail design and construction, following best practice standards for new jail construction projects. That's very general. The second one lays out who's on the committee. The third to the eighth actually lays out some of the process, and I think a couple things are in here that would involve the board on a regular basis. There's number 5 says JDCC will provide a monthly update to the board, so we would have a chance there to have further discussion on the points that have been raised and the questions that have been raised, as well as any updates that this committee is thinking about. They're not going to be the final decision maker. Number 7 says bring the cost back to the board, okay? And that's going to be part of the final design decision. And then, the eighth one says, in consultation, blah, blah, blah. The board is in charge of this process, and I think there's at least 3 safeguards in there, plus the fact that our county administrator will be the chair, to keep us fully informed, and to realize that this committee is not the decision maker. They may make recommendations to us,
Exactly.
but, on a monthly basis, on a budget cost determination, and on, budget and design recommendations will all be brought to the board for approval, which means discussion, so we don't have to approve what they bring. You can send them back to the drawing board, literally, for the architect, but whatever. So it's general in here, and there are a lot of questions. It's new to us. I think it's laid out fairly well, and I would make a motion to approve the resolution.
We have a motion. Motion was,
Oh.
we were in discussion, so.
Okay,
I
that's
think
right, we do.
Yes,
Yes,
yes. Motion
sorry.
made by Commissioner Jacobs,
So
second by
much
Commissioner
discussion,
Meyer.
I lost track.
So,
Yeah.
let's proceed to vote. All those in favor of creating the committee, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay? Okay, and then, putting on the agenda for the next meeting, the decision who the 2 county commissioners would be? Good. As an item of action? All right. Thank you. All right, now we are at general business 7.1. Discuss, approve, deny Department of Natural Resources Deer Management Action Plan. Who's going to?
Added a
Thank you.
few more things for you.
And it's in color.
It is, yeah.
Thank you.
I figured it had to be.
Thank you.
I don't know if anybody. There's extra. Well, good morning. So I guess I'm here today to talk about potential access to,
And I apologize, you are?
Todd Frober with Minnesota DNR.
Okay,
I apologize. The
That's
landowner
okay.
assistant specialist to southeast
It's my
Minnesota.
house and all the deer.
And I deal with everything, deer in the southeast, so. And I'm here to talk about potential access to, the old Winona County landfill site. And from the first, I guess, page here, you can see our, priority sections. So it gets a little busy with, the squares and circles and hexagons and everything else you see there. But those essentially, those points are, CWD positives and our areas with the first, second, third, red, orange, and yellow are our priority sections. So those are surrounding, CWD positives. And those are adult does mainly is what we're focusing on because we are considering them the disease anchor. And then some of those others are clusters of males. So that's our big broad area, I guess, of southeastern Minnesota. And if we go to the next 2 pages, so page 2 and 3, I guess is page 2 is the extended view of the Winona area where we are focusing on. Again, the first, second, and third first section focus. The green parcels is where the Winona County landfill site falls within that priority area. And I guess page 3 is a compressed view, so with
Great, so that makes it third priority, right?
it's third priority. So this is our focus section. So the nearest positive, as you can see, is just southwest of there. So about a mile from, I guess, a parcel to parcel. So
I guess, I'm sorry, I'm looking on the second page, that little green block. Is that the
Yeah, so
the
he's
green?
saying
The
this
green
is
is the county landfill
Yeah.
property.
And
Okay.
that is
Correct.
where they had a test. And this
Yeah.
gray thingy?
Gotcha. Mhm.
Yeah.
All right. I just want to make sure.
That's what
The
I
green
think,
dot is
right?
where they found the positive.
Right, okay.
and that green dot just by Wilson is a positive doe, so an adult doe. And why that's important is because obviously when does have fawns, they are in very close contact with each other, constantly licking, cleaning each other, and those family groups are 3 to 4 times more likely to have CWD than an individual on the landscape. And so once I guess now we have a purview of where we are working, where we would like to work. The reason why we are doing this, we are basing this off of, I guess, best science out of Illinois. And we did talk about this before, so Illinois has done active management from the beginning, and Wisconsin has not done active management. And from those, you can see the number of positive deer are in parentheses of the deer sampled. So Wisconsin is largely considered the worst case scenario. They have not done any active management, any active culling of deer. Illinois does do active management. They do cull deer. And on page 5, so that there was a study from 2003, so it was first detected in 2002. So 2003 to 2012, they analyzed results, and 2003 to 2007, both Wisconsin and Illinois practiced active management. which was agency culling, liberalized tag allocations, so getting hunters more involved as well. And in 2007 is when Wisconsin stopped. They had serious public pushback from hunter groups, and it went up to the legislature in Wisconsin. Basically, the DNR got their abilities taken away to actively manage the disease. And since then, Wisconsin's CWD prevalence rate has increased precipitously. So, and today, in fact, it's much worse than it was in 2012. So, page 6. Those are the comparisons of just sheer CWD positives by the two states. So Wisconsin, 5,370, Illinois, 610 since 2002. In Wisconsin this year alone had 1,154 CWD positives. If we compare that to Minnesota, we have currently 76 positives. So we do.
I'm sorry, I thought a friend that hunts in Wisconsin said it's not mandatory to have them tested, right?
It is not mandatory in Wisconsin.
So that was volunteer?
It's voluntary. Yep, testing is
Testing?
voluntary. And as I mentioned before, Wisconsin is probably worst case scenario CWD. They don't have a lot of funding dedicated to it. And they have about 7% of their hunters test their deer. So,
But it's all
statewide, so
voluntary. Okay.
it's all voluntary. Yep. Page 7 gets a little busy with all the text on the side. I just provided that for you if you'd like to read it, but I guess I'd like to just concentrate on the figure on the right. So this is a map of Illinois and kind of their 3 region areas, and the number of deer harvested within the state. So basically this is saying, so pre-CWD, that was their CWD harvest. Post-CWD, that was their deer harvest. One of the main concerns with hunters is that the DNR is going to kill all the deer. It's going to have major implications on population. It definitely will in localized areas, but if we're talking about regional areas or DPAs, deer permit areas, as we describe them in Minnesota, it's not going to have major effects. We are trying to reduce densities within our known disease areas and turn over the population. So create a younger population that does not have disease. And then, I guess lastly, the next page, page 8. So this graph on the right is from Minnesota. This is our survey results, so winter 2016-17 in the light gray, and then winter 2018-19 in the dark gray. As you can see, we skipped a year because we did not have adequate snow cover the year in between, but this is our estimated deer population within those areas. So the core one is around the Preston area, and then there's also a low and a high prevalence deer area. And then DPA 603, which was the disease area surrounding Preston, and that was basically Fillmore County, so that's a deer permit area. It's the disease area, but as you can see, over a wide DPA, it has declined about 1.5 deer per square mile harvested. So,
What is it you're asking us today to declare open season on the landfill, or what?
we would like
hunting?
access for USDA Wildlife Services to cull deer on the landfill.
Not sell permits to individual residents to
Nope.
enjoy the hunt?
Nope. This is we are in the agency culling phase, so this is all agency cull deer, and all the deer that we take are tested for CWD, and they go to a local processor, and all deer that are not detected, the venison is then distributed either to participating landowners or members of the public who want to receive venison. So.
Sausage for
So
all
what-
50,000 residents.
What percentage of the population are you trying to take? 100?
What are we trying to take of the population?
What percentage of the population are you trying to take?
Well, very, I guess, difficult to answer just based on populations.
5%, 50%, 95%?
I mean, realistically, it'd be nice to take 20 to 25% of the population, but we've never achieved that in Fillmore County, around the Preston area. So, I mean, realistically, we get close to about 15 to maybe 20, pushing
You're
20.
targeting those?
Yes, we are targeting family groups, so those does, but we're not being incredibly selective unless if there's a participating landowner who has restrictions, then we are, doing our best to work within those parameters and respect their rights as a private landowner, so.
The land you're talking about is owned by the Winona County
Correct.
taxpayers.
We're not working
So you're
anywhere
not-
where we don't have explicit permission to work, so.
Wouldn't have you're not asking the neighbor to that property to participate.
No, not unless they would agree to it, and not unless they want active management on their property, so.
Not totally in this. This is something, I know if I talked to some deer hunters, I'd get a lot of different reactions to what this is proposing. Just for your own information, I did have to call the DNR. People were not happy with the collection site at the Fleet Farm location. It was horrific. I didn't see it personally, but I saw pictures of the cleanliness and the carcasses and such that were left there. It was not ideally for a public health perspective. And then the number, I'm not sure what that's, Mother Nature will take care of a small amount. I don't know what Mother Nature will take care of, and you're asking us to go out there and hunt. And a lot of people have felt that the DNR is actually restricting the value on some of our hunting land by really pushing this chronic wasting disease. People aren't wanting to come buy land here to hunt if they think it's diseased deer. It's a perception that's out there. I talked to the assessor about that. So that concerns me if our tax base is being eroded because of the DNR saying that we've got a problem here.
Yeah, we do have a problem. There's absolutely, this is one of the biggest crises facing wildlife management in our modern age. So if we don't do anything, it's only gonna get worse.
The point you were trying to make, if I understood it right, but I kind of wanted to ask this question anyway. That is what you were getting at on the heck page this one is.
Okay.
But it's really about the rate of deer that are dying just because of CWD. And if I understood what you were giving examples of what the mortality rate is of deer that aren't surviving, and that will happen anyway if we don't address CWD. Is that what you were kind of getting at?
Yeah, so there's gonna be research has shown there's population level declines once prevalence reaches about 20%. This graph on the right is strictly hunter harvested deer.
Okay.
My thought on showing this is because I'm trying to show that although this is a common complaint, it is hardly, noticeable with harvested deer per square mile. But if we don't do anything about it, I'm not gonna go on fear, but if we have major population declines and whitetails in Minnesota, like that's our #1 funding source for the state of Minnesota for Department of Natural Resources. And if there are human implications or agricultural implications, the economic impacts are gonna be far greater than potentially just property values.
As an agricultural implication, what are you saying?
They are, so currently there's talk in EU countries to restrict any imports of agricultural exports into EU countries from CWD affected areas. And currently in Norway, where they have CWD and their reindeer herd, they have restricted any imports on
Beef or
hay.
swine? Is that what you're saying?
No, it's on hay from any CWD affected areas, so. There's no implications of cross-species transmission into cattle or swine currently.
Not grain, just hay, is that what you're saying?
Currently in Norway, yes, but they're voting on it, or they're
So
considering
can
it
it be
in EU.
transmitted through grain, or can it only be transmitted through hay?
Prion has been found in grasses, so it's prions are the disease that cause CWD, or the agent that causes CWD. They have been found in grasses, so they uptaken by grass roots and stuff. So it's
From a-
not
Well, from an agriculture standpoint, forage doesn't move very much because it's so expensive. Such a volume product, it stays local. Grain gets shipped around the world.
Yep.
So, I mean, I don't really see I was looking for a bigger agricultural problem there.
Well,
To me, the agricultural problem is,
CWD is it's a TSE, it's transmissible spongiform encephalopathy, is the disease family it's in. It's the same family as bovine spongiform encephalopathy. The longer that this persists on the landscape, or the more CWD positives there are, the higher the likelihood of cross species jump. If this jumped into cattle, this would be not only the end of deer hunting in Minnesota, it would effectively, I mean, I don't know the implications. It would be horrible for
has
deer
that
hunting.
happened, or, I mean?
No, it
can
has not
happen?
happened, and I say I'm not gonna, I guess, project on fear, but this
Could
is,
do you feel it could happen?
the risk is not zero.
So, didn't we have that happen with elk? Did it?
There's CWD detected in elk, so all
We do have elk
cervids-
farmers in the area. Got a lot of them up in my area.
Although I've heard just the number of people hunting is declining.
Yep.
What's the DNR plan to increase recreationally hunting versus the DNR going out there and doing this? Because I'm sure, I don't have the statistic, but I know we could get it, for every recreational hunter, they project X number of dollars into the the economy and everything when they buy food and gas and bullets and all the things that they come to do that here in southeast Minnesota. So what's the DNR doing to address just the decline in recreational hunters
Well,
to help control this?
I mean, that's a huge issue. There's a national efforts called R3, recruitment, reactivation, retention of hunters and anglers, trying to get more people, and then I guess modernizing the Pittman-Robertson Act. So there's multiple things that are going on nationally, and I guess within the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, we have an R3 coordinator and various programs of trying to get kids into the outdoors, whether that be for state parks or hunting and fishing. And I mean, there's lots going on within the R3 community, and a lot with mentored adult hunts. So,
And I mean, I hate to say this, but in hunting and fishing, every year there's more regulations that you can only hunt in this limited area, this number of days. Fish, you can take one this size and one this size, but not that size. I mean, the rules on any of this outdoor recreation is getting enormous. I mean, you almost need you have to have a rule book with you when you're out fishing to know what you can take out of what. And I do that more than I don't hunt. But so you have restricted hunting considerably by length of time and zones when you buy a hunting license, correct? And
not in southeastern Minnesota, at least for deer. I mean, in recent years, it's expanded vastly. So I mean, the season is from.
So a free hunting license during X number of days, let anybody that wants to come hunt, let them come hunt. Would that not help correct this problem more than having a few DNR people go out and shoot them?
So coincidentally, I have a neighbor who once a year calls me and tells me they get a DNR permit and they're gonna take quite a few deer.
Yeah.
And they do it out of season because of the deer depredation. So I know that there's more than just hunting season available.
Yeah, you have to get a special permit. I think it's a landowner permit. And you can take so many. But again, open the doors. Let them come hunt.
For me, I haven't had a single constituent contact me on this. I'm gonna guess after this presentation, the media is gonna present something. Maybe I will. That'll help kind of flesh some of that out. But From my standpoint, as a farmer who is surrounded on 90% of my property is surrounded by DNR property, win if they take 25% of the deer because I'm gonna have 25% less deer chewing down my crops. It's a win in that the citizens are gonna run into 25% less deer with their cars. It's a win in that we're gonna help eliminate the disease. And my experience with the DNR in my neighborhood is they're good neighbors and they're generally trying to do the right thing.
And to your comment, I know several people that will call and say, you know, that they're
Well, I'm
anti,
sure we're gonna,
they're
after that's printed
DNR.
in the paper,
Yeah.
then people will
Yep.
call and express what their concerns are and we'll know
So
better.
today, you're just asking us permission to hunt in the, on the county landfill property.
Correct.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Commissioner Olson, seconded by Commissioner Kvesi to approve the request to approve an agency culling on the county landfill property. Any further discussion? I have, yes, Ms. Cawley.
Stone Point Park is part of, and the landfill is not all of Stone Point Park. So to be clear, DNR is requesting other areas, not just the landfill portion of Stone Point Park. Is this correct?
I mean, you guys can designate where you see fit, that management activity take place, so.
Well, we just want to coordinate with the Planning and Environmental Services Department that oversees park administration to post entrances. You know, there are neighbors along that area that they get notices of when this activity is going to take place. And the landfill is not the only wooded area, so that wouldn't be the only habitat on the site that is county property. So I just want to clarify that the hunt wouldn't be restricted to just the landfill, the way I'm understanding it. So I just want to make sure that language is clear if that is in fact.
Right, and
I don't agree with that. I feel like this is all of our county-owned property that they want access to, and if anything, we should be restricting it in the high-traffic area on top where we have our shooting range. Obviously, you have to, goes without saying, you're gonna honor general hunting safety regulations, and that if we've got people coming and going on that main road, that would be the place where I wouldn't want to see the hunting. All the surrounding land is where I would want to see the hunting. So I wouldn't say limited to the
Well,
landfill.
this brings an issue. Is this, I guess, is this a one-time, like 1 week you're gonna do this, or is this ongoing?
So the agency calling phase started on February 3rd, and it ends March 31st. So, and it's not there every day. So the deer are, so this is, we contract USDA Wildlife Services to do the culling. So, they bait on site, so it's in a tub. Every time if there's a positive deer, the tub is taken away. Bait's dumped and a new tub is put in there to reduce disease transmission potential. And this is done with rifles and thermal equipment, and they are, this is what they do for a job. So safety is of utmost.
So it is a
consideration.
just this year, we're agreeing to it for just this year through
Correct.
through what, March?
March 31st.
End of
So it won't be
March.
gardening season.
Right, it should still be it should be limited travel, but Ms. Qualley is, we are responsible for the safety of, because it is a
Yeah,
public
but
owned.
her statement is that she wants it limited to the landfill area.
No, no,
and then-
not.
No.
Sorry, that was the opposite.
Not.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Not
Yeah.
limited.
Yeah.
Right,
Okay, not the
All
landfill
sorts of
area.
wooded areas,
Okay.
on the.
Well, I misunderstood then, yeah. I feel like it should be,
Bessie.
So I think we're in agreement.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the discussion so far. I do like the idea that there's going to be less crop destruction, less car accidents, and ultimately less disease being transmitted possibly across species. If you hunt on the county property, I agree it should be not just the landfill. The landfill's wide open, the deer aren't valleys, but where are they going to be butchered? So I want to avoid a Fleet Farm type of.
Oh, so this is all, we have a contract with a butcher in Spring Valley, and so this is all being done by them, and there's a dumpster specifically provided just for them. So. No, no. Oh, yeah. So sorry. Everything is taken out, so there's no entrails left on. Would be left on the county property. So.
Racks could be ours, so we could auction them off and make some money.
I had another question and it's gone.
People pay
I'll
big
think
bucks
about
for
it.
trophies. Yeah, we could put it on the wall. Hey, we gotta pay the taxes. We gotta pay the rent somehow.
Oh, do you have an estimated number that you might, said 15 to 20%?
Yeah, I would say that would be, I mean, absolute best case scenario. Last year we shot 497 in the Preston area, so that's over, that wide area. So I would say it would be somewhat close to that in the Winona area, just based on where disease is. But that's the greater area of where we're focusing on over here. So
We do have farmers' fields around
Well, we will expect a report.
Yep.
If we want it, because you may come back to us again and want to do this again.
Likely.
Expect a report. And do you have your home phone number I can give to
Sure.
third constituents? I can call after-
651-470-5018.
Thank you, because I know I will get some calls on this. Okay, so we have a motion to approve this chronic wasting cull area for this particular envelope of time through March 30, did you say March 31st?
Yes.
Okay, all right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Okay, approved.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, 7.2, approve resolution to support one watershed, one plan application for the Mississippi River, Winona, and La Crescent watersheds. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. And I have placed on the agenda for this morning's meeting a resolution for this board to sign to approve moving forward with one watershed, one plan for the Mississippi River, Winona watershed, and the La Crescent. And what I've passed around, the first page is a list of facts that this was put together by Darrell Buck at SWCD, and basically giving an overview of what a resolution to support one watershed, one plan would entail. And basically, we feel that this is a good time to step forward with this. The local government units that could be potentially involved with the one watershed, one plan are in a good place. We have the data that we need to move forward. We have total maximum daily loads done, and the RAPS reports will be done for the La Crescent. Those have already been done for a couple of years already with the Mississippi River Winona, but the La Crescents will be done within the next couple months. So we have the scientific data that we need to move forward with watershed-based planning. And one of the things that is really pushing this forward is if we don't move forward, then we will not be able to get any of the designated one watershed, one plan funds that could be used to put conservation practices on the landscape. So every year that we delay is another year that we lose out on designated funds. So that's all I have. I'm sure you have questions.
So, this would be Houston, Wabasha, Olmsted, and Winona in this watershed, correct? Parts of those counties?
Right, and.
So my
if you-
question is, does our entering into this, because I've talked to both Olmsted and Wabasha commissioners, and they've got other watershed plans that they're working on currently, and kind of wanting to maybe get those either wrapped up or see how they work before they commit to this. So what I'm at, my specific question is, if we were to pass this resolution today, does it somehow trigger the process to start and in any way force them to engage in that process? And if it doesn't, then what good does it do us to start in it on our own?
You're referring to the Zumbro One Watershed, One Plan, I'm assuming, because Olmsted and Wabasha staff are involved in that process right now, but that is coming to an end. They're getting near the end, and if we were to move forward with the Mississippi River, Winona, and La Crescent, by the time we submit the application, it gets reviewed by Bowser, and assuming it gets awarded to this watershed, we would not start the planning process until 2021. That completed plan would need to be submitted to Bowser by June 30th of 2023 for implementation in 2024. The Zumbro would, that's already in its implementation phase by that time. So we have asked, that's, because that was my main concern. I did not want staff from one county to be working on two different One Watershed, One Plan initiatives at the same time.
I guess what I'm at, I don't think I got a straight or clear answer on that. Are we triggering a process that they have not yet committed to? And would they be in any way obligated
No,
to follow our lead on it?
no. And Olmsted County has already approved by resolution this process. We have resolutions for,
Crescent? They've approved that?
yes,
Okay.
yes. And
County board or the
the
soil and water?
county board, and it will be going to the SWCD. Wabasha, will be on the agenda soon for that county. Houston County and River SWCD, they have already approved resolutions. So if somebody doesn't participate or doesn't sign a resolution, I guess technically you still could move forward, but you just kind of have a hole in the watershed for participation. But from what I understand with communications with other participating counties and SWCDs, I think everybody's going ahead. I know I've been told after this meeting to make sure to email everybody and let them know, what this board has determined.
Yeah, that was actually my question, that each of these county boards have to opt into this resolution.
That would
So
be preferred, yes.
that's in process and already done for Houston and for Olmsted, you said?
Yes.
And it's on the agenda for Wabasha.
Correct.
So they will be able to consider their own circumstances and their own timelines when they deal with it.
Correct.
Because I agree, you wouldn't want to be pulling people in too
Yeah.
many
Speak for
directions.
somebody
And I
else.
guess that's
Yeah.
my preference too, is, yes, you can technically move forward if somebody chooses not to participate, but I don't think that's, personally, I don't think that's a good idea. I'd like to see all of the boards, whether it's SWCD and counties, be on board and be willing to partner together on this initiative. 'Cause that's what it's all about.
I
working
apologize, I
together.
see that's on here under Are We Ready? It's the last
Right.
update.
Yes.
So I apologize, I didn't quite get that far.
No, and I
Jacob.
can certainly,
Okay, Commissioner Jacob had another question.
So I had some question on the numbers that were given in the packet. It said roughly 200 to 250,000 for planning. So is that per county or is that per watershed?
that's for the watershed.
That 200,000 then would be divvied amongst 4 counties, so we might potentially see 50,000 or a quarter of that, or we don't know how that.
Well, and that would probably go towards a bulk of that to a consultant to work with the LGUs and develop the plan. And that's what a lot of the One Watershed, One plans have been doing to date, is working with consultants to put this all together.
And then that money is only for planning, it's not for any programs on the ground.
Correct. And then once the plan is approved, then the implementation monies come down the pike. And if we move forward with this now, assuming everybody else says yes, we would have, by June of 2023, submitting this completed water plan and implementation by 2024. All of the One Watershed, One Plan funds, and I think Daryl put this on the next page. Yes, why now? On the towards halfway down the second page. Why now? State funds are 100% clean water, land, and legacy money, which right now is set to expire in 2034. So if we move forward now and get our plan completed on time and start the implementation to put practices on the ground, we would be able to tap into that dedicated One Watershed, One Plan funding for 10 to 11 years. And of course, those funds are determined by the legislature, but they have a formula based, and it's a $250,000 base funding, and then plus funding based on the number of public water miles and number of acres of private land. That's the formula they're using right now. The route.
We're up over 100. We're up over, $1 million. Yeah, over $1 million to that
but
area.
that's a much larger watershed than the Mississippi River, Winona, La Crescent.
Other questions, Steve?
So there's 63 watersheds, is that right? Is that the number now, statewide?
That's close, yes.
So I'm trying to figure out where the money's going. And I take 63 times this 250,000 planning comes to 15.75 million. All of which, so this is part of my frustrations, all of which doesn't put a single program on the ground, it just plans. But when I take the 50,000 that we potentially would get out of this funding that we're applying for now, times 87 counties, that only comes to 4.3 million, which leaves 10 million of the 15 million somehow, to me, somewhat unaccounted for. So I'm maybe wanting some clarification on the money. Different frustration I'm having here is that I haven't had a chance to read this or look at this, and I'm guessing if it wasn't in our packet, right?
Yes.
We just got it
Correct,
now?
wasn't.
So
It was something that,
likewise, anyone from the public who wants to look through our packet hasn't had a chance to see it. So I've reluctantly gone along with the original River, One Watershed, One Plan. I intend to probably go along with this, especially with dissolving the Southeast Minnesota Water Resource Board. I feel like this will do some of the work that that had been doing. I've got some concerns with how the resolution is written. There's phrases in there that I'd maybe like to see changed. And with the introduction of this, I probably would like another 30 days because I feel like none of us are really doing our due diligence if we get new information, don't review it, and then pass something.
Yes, okay. So if we were to delay until our first meeting of March, then consider it again?
It doesn't have to be 30 days, next meeting. I'm
The
sorry.
25th would be sufficient for you? Okay.
Well, if we can look at these couple word changings.
That doesn't, I mean, given that other boards are looking at this in February, that doesn't, you don't see that as causing a
Timeline.
significant delay?
no. The RFP comes out in late March.
Okay. So it does cut down your time somewhat, but you're waiting for other boards as well, anyway.
Bessie?
Okay, we did have the resolution printed, and it's been in the public. Did you have anything?
Yes, I
Where
have,
are your specific concerns?
Paragraph 6,
Now therefore be it resolved?
yeah, where it says recognizes and supports. To me, I would say agree to participate. And paragraph 7, the other one I'd like to change is where it says welcomes the opportunity. I would replace that with agree to collaborate. Because honestly, that's where I'm at.
And if I could chime in, being part of the One Watershed in the river, there's some unresolved governance, our governance model is unresolved. Who is making these decisions? And we'll probably need Karen to weigh in it because it deals with the creation of joint powers boards or joint powers entities. And we're talking a lot of money. I mean, that group has over $1.4 million. And to have, you know, who's responsible, who's being held accountable for doing those things. So the governance model is critical. We haven't really resolved all of that. And one of my questions then, you know, when you say one watershed, one plan, wasn't this little red down here, the Mississippi La Crescent, wasn't that an independent? But now all of a sudden it's not big enough to be one by itself? Why did that get, I feel a little slighted. Why did that area get thrown in with the Olmsted County and the Wabasha County? I thought we were all dependent on the watershed. I mean, it seems like a little
Yep,
hypocritical
and that's, you
combination.
bring up a very good point. Okay, so this map was included in your packets.
Right.
This is the map of the entire state of Minnesota. All the watershed areas that are colored are those that are already participating or have completed their one watershed, one plan. So to date, there are 30 watersheds that are on board. So looking at the Mississippi River, Winona, and the La Crescent, lumping those two together, it's unique because you're doing that. And
What's 1 plus 2? It's not 1 plus 1, 1.
Right, correct.
Okay, yeah.
Correct, I agree. But when you're looking at all the watersheds, these are what is called a Huck 8 scale. So they're of a certain size. And these watershed designation sizes were established by the USGS in the early 1970s. They went through the whole United States and did this. And so watersheds, there are many different scales, many different sizes. You can have Gilmore Creek, you can have Pleasant Valley Creek, it's just very, very small. Or you could have very large, like the Root River watershed, or you can talk basins, the Southeast Minnesota basin. So it's all a matter of scale. When the Board of